This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. We must increase vaccinations among the unvaccinated with new vaccination requirements.
It's not going to work. We have other countries with much higher rates of vaccination, and they're seeing record surges of COVID because that's what viruses do.
Many of us are frustrated with the nearly 80 million Americans who are still not vaccinated.
Their freedom. I want my freedom to live.
Rest in peace, Wheezy.
We are going to need the people to engage in age-old American tradition of simply saying, no, I'm not going to comply. Now, what are you going to do about it?
It never stops. They want things to get worse because they want you to suffer so that they can grandstand on your suffering and push for even more control.
They have criminalized freedom. They've made getting sick illegal.
This isn't about COVID any more than the Patriot Act was about Al-Qaeda. It's about government asserting more control over your lives, your rights, your properties, and in this case, your bodily autonomy.
It has a lot of vaccinated people alarmed because of the power grab that's involved.
Enough is enough. We better change our tune and start resisting.
Government makes up less than 1% of the population. If even 5 or 10% of Americans simply refuse to comply, all of this goes away.
Absolutely, this is the hill worth dying on.
We haven't given the statutory authority to any agency to do this kind of thing.
There is no such thing as government power. There's only what we are willing to comply to.
We're in the tough stretch, and it could last for a while.
That's what this has always been about. It's never about what they say it is. It's about controlling you. And it ends when we decide to end it.
This BS is going to stop.
It's time for us to wake up.
There's only one way to fight back against this, and it's mass non-compliance.
This is the most important thing to fight against.
You can help stop this. You are the power.
There's nothing, not a single thing we're unable to do if we do it together.
And I'm fucking livid that we are stuck in the timeline where Alex Jones is right. Kind of worse than it was.
Oh no! Oh, okay, no.
Why aren't the Amish afraid of COVID? Because they don't have TVs. As I said, democracy is a system that reinforces authoritarian ideals.
I hope I don't get canceled. Talk to Steve.
Being a victim of a tragedy doesn't make you an expert in public policy.
Well, I mean, AOC is a drama queen and she's full of shit.
Remember, they lost the Afghan war 10 years ago.
You brought a freaking guillotine.
They said, you don't get to tell us no. We're the state health department. And I said, hell no.
It wasn't making Christianity better. It was making rock worse.
What the fuck do you have on your face, Olivia?
You want to make the world a better place? Have some babies and raise them to not be stupid.
I remember thinking, man, governments are not going to like this shit.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, activists, shitposters, and people of the internet, thank you for tuning into another episode of O'Donnell for Liberty. As always, I'm your host, Justin. Before we get started, just remember whatever platform you listen on, whether YouTube Live, Odyssey, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, or on the air at lrn.fm, you can help grow the show by liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing with your friends. If you enjoy the content, you can join our production team by visiting patreon.com/O'Donnell for Liberty. Again, that's patreon.com/O'Donnell, the number 4 Liberty. If you want to keep in touch between shows, follow me on social media and join our community Discord channel where you can chat with other fans about the show at any time. All these links can be found in the description of the video or podcast you're listening to, as well as on o'donnellforliberty.com. So check the description for that link and make sure you head over today. First and foremost, shout out to our sponsor, snackswag.com, where you can get all your favorite Liberty merch, including some awesome new hoodies just in time for winter that celebrate your favorite NASCAR driver, Brandon. Just in time for the colder weather to start creeping in. So make sure you remember to head over to snackswag.com and pick up your merch today. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the pandemic of people in the liberty movement who care more about titles and accolades than success or meaningful activism, and wherever else we end up going with the conversation. So we're going to take questions, so make sure you hit that like button, leave some comments, and tell us what you think in the chat, and give a big warm welcome to tonight's guest, past Libertarian candidate for U.S. Congress, Libertarian doer and activist, AJ Olding. AJ, thanks for joining tonight. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm great. For those of you who haven't been watching the whole time we've been doing and have been new to the show. AJ is our first repeat guest, all the way from episode 3, if you want to go back and catch those. But a little bit different topic we want to touch on, a little bit different approach we want to take on things. AJ, one thing I've been asking everyone when they do come on, especially with the newer and bigger growing audience, is like, how did you end up becoming a liberty activist? What was it that dragged you to libertarianism and deciding that you wanted to work towards making the world more free in your lifetime?
We actually covered this when I had a show and I had you on. I don't know, man. The path to libertarianism is a very long one for a lot of people, but I think I do remember the exact moment that, like, the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will, was the following the Boston Marathon bombing. Adam Kokesh put out a video on his YouTube page where he starts talking about the number of people who died in a bombing yesterday and the number of people who were injured, and like the number wasn't aligning with what happened in Boston. He was like 50 people dead, 100 people injured, and then like he gets like a minute in and he's like, and that happened in Baghdad yesterday. I was like, oh, this was a misdirect. Okay. And the media doesn't care about that because they're not Americans. And nationalism was the very last straw that sort of broke for me, that took me out of the Republican Party and into out of honestly, like out of the Republican Party, out of calling myself a patriot, out of believing in the American system in any sort of like real meaningful way, or at least being a stand for it of sorts. And that was when I changed my political activism from knocking doors for Mitt Romney to literally I got engaged just with Adam Kokesh when he would go around the country and I'd go see where he was. And one day he asked me to join the Libertarian Party to support him in New Orleans in getting his like localization plank passed, which never came to fruition in the LP's platform. But it was sort of just from there I got into the LP at that point, and then it's okay, well, this campaign's going on, I'm going to go help there. This campaign's going on, I'm going to help there. Elizabeth Warren is having an event at Manchester Community College. I'm going to go stand and hold a sign outside about what a liar she is. Like it just, from that point in time, it became a moment of like, let me go do everything that I can to try to make the world a more free place, because that's what I want.
I do remember you saying at one point, like so many others, that it was Gary Johnson and Bill Weld who brought you into the Libertarian Party and convinced you to join the Libertarian Party, but for a completely different reason than everyone else is.
Oh, God. Yeah. Right. Okay. So like one of the biggest motivating factors in getting involved in the Libertarian Party for me was seeing how bad Gary Johnson was in 2016 and just sort of saying, like, I never want someone like that to represent me again. And for everyone who wants to say like Jo Jorgensen had her problems, this, that, and the other, she was a very principled candidate. Like the worst thing that I ever heard her say as far as like being off message was probably when she went on Ian Freeman's show. And she was asked, like, well, would New Hampshire be allowed to secede if you were president? And instead of answering the question, she said, well, why would you want to secede if I was president? And that was the most, like, off-the-wall thing that I heard from her, like, out of libertarianism from her. So, you know, you can say that she wasn't a great candidate, but at least she was principled, I thought. And I sort of felt like, yeah, I helped push things in a direction where we didn't just get someone who was another, like, not that great on messaging, someone who like wasn't super principled, right?
Right, but the epidemic and like the real problem wasn't even just the candidates. It was more the culture of the party and the culture of the liberty movement that allowed candidates like that to rise to the top.
Yeah. So, okay. So with Gary Johnson, if I remember correctly, and this was a little bit before my time, this is sort of like secondhand knowledge. If I remember correctly, in 2016, where was the convention? It was
Orlando.
It was Orlando. And there was like some other convention going on in town, and
Comic-Con.
I've been told, and I don't know how true this is, that Gary Johnson and his campaign staff went over to Comic-Con to convince people to become delegates to nationals, and some of the states who had like more lax rules about who could be an alternate just were like, yeah, sure, screw it. And that's how Gary Johnson got the votes to win in 2016. That's what I've been told. I don't know that that's true.
I wouldn't put it past them, but they would have only been able to recruit people who are already Libertarian members at the start of convention.
Okay.
Who are at Comic-Con. And I also wouldn't be surprised if there was a huge overlap of people at Comic-Con who are already Libertarian Party members.
There might be.
So, like, that wouldn't surprise me. I mean, hell, when Vermin Supreme was campaigning in New Hampshire, his biggest event was Comic-Con in Concord.
Right. But so regardless whether that story is true or not, which we should go ahead and say, like, I don't want anyone to come after me and say AJ Olding accused Gary Johnson of doing very heinous shit. So I'm not going to stand by that. I'm just saying, like, this is sort of the culture that I was brought into, is what I've been told it is that it sort of felt like at the time it was just this very fragile thing that, like, any person with any kind of connections could sort of sway whatever direction they wanted. And it really didn't matter, like, what you believed.
Well, no, so the 2016 convention was very much a who could buy the nomination. It felt like being there. We had like Bill Weld and Gary Johnson's PAC. Some people were claiming that they offered to pay for hotel rooms and extend people so they could stay through the voting because business got delayed.
I don't know all the details of like the Alicia Dern.
Yeah, but then you had like John McAfee offering people drugs and access to some of the best strippers in Orlando in exchange for their vote.
Rest in peace to John McAfee.
But like it was very much that kind of environment, and like from what I saw, the only one like straight up campaigning to win votes on principle was Austin Peterson. He was just a pretentious asshole when he went about it.
Oh yeah, Austin Peterson, I think definitely rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, and he's a Republican now. So,
and he's someone who I can count as a friend now. Like I can talk to him regularly. It's like things change and evolve. I used to be his biggest critic back in the day.
I believe he has me blocked on Twitter. I don't remember why.
But he does block people like it's his job. But like moving forward, from that point, you dove headfirst. You started actually doing the work and doing what needed to be done. And I remember the first time you were elected to the New Hampshire State Committee, you weren't even in the room.
No.
Somebody had asked me if I would run for a position. I said, no, let's nominate AJ. He's on a business trip. And you got texted to inform you that you had just been elected to the state committee. And rather than rejecting it,
I was concussed at the time. I don't know if that counts, if that is even like proper legal consent, but yeah.
It's the time-honored tradition of not being there to say no.
Right.
But you didn't turn it down. You went with it. You did things. You tried to rally people. And we grew the party. We did meaningful activism. And then 2020 happened.
2020 was horrible, right? 2020 was a year when you really saw sort of how fragile what it was that we had built. And I'm very happy with what sort of occurred with I'm very happy with what sort of we had going on in 2018, 2019. I did feel like the party was going in a good direction, but it was more of a social thing, right? Like we had a bunch of meetups and stuff like that, but we weren't really doing a ton of activism. And when it came time for 2020 to come around, like when no one had been doing this sort of proper political activism in 2018 and 2019, we sort of saw cracks as, well, it's hard to teach people how to do proper politicking in the middle of a pandemic when people don't want to come out anyway, right? Like it would be one thing if we had to get people who knew what they were doing to work around the pandemic, or if we had to teach people who didn't know what they were doing how to do things during regular times. But the truth is, you and I had to learn how to do things, how to teach ourselves how to do things during a pandemic, while also begging other people who didn't know how to do these things to help us during a pandemic that many of them just did not want to go out in. And I'll be honest, not even from a disease or scared perspective, the pandemic made things so much harder and so much more anxiety driven, because I feel like it really affected the way that a lot of people interacted with you when you try to talk to them face to face, because it's a very difficult thing.
Yeah,
it's a very difficult thing to do.
I remember giving everyone advice going into 2020 when we were doing a petition drive for the first time in 4 years in New Hampshire, and everyone's like, "Well, you ran the last petition drive. Like, how did it go?" I'm like, it was super freaking easy. We got 5,000 signatures in 3 weeks, and it was no skin off our backs. It was super easy. Like, here's all we have to do, and all we have to do to do it. And then, like, I gave that advice like a few weeks before the pandemic started, and then it came time to actually do it. One, we couldn't get people to help. We couldn't get people to actually go and petition. And then when we did get out to petition, people wouldn't talk to us. People wouldn't approach us. Like,
well, we had people who backed out of helping us following PorkFest 2020, when there was, I don't remember who it was who made a joke about catching COVID, who scared actual activists off of our campaign, because then those people actually got scared that they might go out and catch COVID. Like, I was mad about that one.
Yeah, we had a whole bunch of people who'd signed up to volunteer to help us with the petition drive, and somebody made a joke, "Oh, I got COVID," and then all of a sudden there's 3 of us.
Right.
No help, nothing to do, and it was the most stressful political activity I've ever engaged in my life, aside from working for Bill Weld and trying to explain to people why they should vote for Bill Weld. But it was a nightmare to get done, because the leadership of the Libertarian Party wouldn't step up to help.
I think a lot of people don't fully understand. Well, no, it wasn't even just leadership. Like, Gilletta was there to help us, and I know we've covered Gillette. You've covered Gillette on other shows. Everyone's covered Gilletta. Gilletta was there to help. She was leadership as far as I was concerned at the time, and she helped. And other people who were in other positions of leadership weren't really around to help. I think a lot of people don't fully understand, when you say nightmare, you're not like being even slightly like hyperbolic at all either. Like, I don't mean this to like belittle people who have PTSD from serious like combat stuff, but I actually do have mild PTSD from July of 2020, like going around and talking to people about signing a petition. And I've knocked on doors thousands of times. I've talked to people thousands of times in person, but doing it a month straight during a pandemic where literally 60% of the people who you even speak to hate you for speaking to you because it's a pandemic.
Right.
Man, it just, it eats and eats and eats at you. Like, I remember one specific, like, people don't fully understand this. Like all I did July of 2020 was eat, sleep, work, and petition. Like, literally that's it. And I remember like a Tuesday or a Thursday night when I had gone out to a market basket alone and was there for like 3 hours and got one petition. I drove back into downtown Nashville to go to Castro's, and I was like crying in the back seat of the car. Like, it was like shaking. Like, it's such a demoralizing and mentally exhausting task. And to like get beyond the barriers that the government puts in front of you. And it's one of those things that would be so easy if you just had like 30 people. But
right.
No, it's like you, me, and like 6 other people.
That's the thing. Even when we had our best individuals averaging 25 to 30 signatures a day on their petitions, whereas in 2016 it was 140 to 150 signatures a day on their petitions, it still would have been doable. It still would have been really easy to do if we had people that stepped up to do it. And unfortunately, we didn't have people that stepped up to do it. And that wasn't a New Hampshire problem. That wasn't even a southern, like a Hillsborough County problem. That was a national problem. We saw across the scale of people just not wanting to step up and do the activism that was needed to make things move forward. And like, to the point, like, you decided to run again for the executive committee at the state party in 2020. And at the convention for your nominating speech, you just tore people apart about not doing things.
I didn't name anybody, but I think a lot of people could think in their heads and think of someone specific, maybe who I wasn't even talking about, that I described. Like,
what was the word you used?
Well, you called it a pandemic of title chasers in your promotion for this on Twitter, but I think I said we have an epidemic of people who want titles and don't want to do work. I think is exactly what I said. And this is one of the only state conventions where we don't have video, and I have no qualms about bragging about the fact that I am a very good public speaker, and I wish that we had the video of that, because a lot of people came up to me and said, inspiring and all that other stuff to me. It was essentially just like, I even said, like, and obviously I ended up moving to Ohio later that year and didn't stay around in New Hampshire, but I said in the speech, I don't want to run for the EC again next year. I want one of you people to do it, so that I have time to do the things that I actually want to do as far as activism goes. Right. So that I have time. I think I said at the time that to run for U.S. Congress again, and I don't know that I would do that now. I don't.
No, in hindsight, like, running for office isn't something I am terribly excited to do ever again. And one of the things I'm so excited for with the growth of LPNH is that there's other people willing to do it.
I think
other people willing to take up the mantle in the future, and it doesn't have to be me.
I think there's a very good chance. I'm living in Cincinnati right now. I think there's a very good chance that I move to Harrison, which is like just outside our interstate loop in Cincinnati. It's 275 that goes around, and like just on the Indiana border. It is there's a town called Harrison where we just had Mike Maines win a city council seat. There were 4 positions up. He came in 4th and actually beat out a Republican for that. And we ran another Libertarian to try to run as well, and he only missed by like 150 votes. So Mike was like 16 votes shy of coming in 3rd, and the other guy, Joe Combs, I think was only like 150, maybe 200 votes behind, coming in 4th instead. So like, I think it's really there for that town specifically, and it's very funny because that's the town where a lot of the Cincinnati cops live.
Yeah, and I mean, to the point that, like, the title chasers who don't do things, the title chasers who just want the title to put on their resume for and call it activism while they tweet away. And nothing against tweeting. That's basically what I do now. I just piss people off on Twitter, but it's not like I'm not doing things off of Twitter. The problem is the people where that's all they do.
If all you're doing is Twitter, or if all you're doing is a podcast, you're probably screwing up. If you are Reason Magazine, or if you are Tom Woods, you can get away with podcasting being your primary form of activism. Outside of that, no. Like, yeah. It's just not. Like,
no, and like, I try and tell people, when people, like, somebody on Twitter was trying to criticize me today, they're like, what have you done aside from running a podcast? And I'm like, well, one, I'm grateful that my podcast has gotten big enough that some stranger on the internet is criticizing it. But 2, here's a laundry list of shit I've done aside from running a podcast. It's like, the podcast is like the last thing I want to do. It's like, it's a hobby. This is something I do because I want to do it. This is something I do for my own enjoyment. And people who watch and listen, thank you so much for supporting me. But like, it's not for other people. It's for me. It's something I enjoy doing and content I enjoy making. The other activism I'm doing is for other people. The activism I do in the real world, building community centers, helping fundraise for nonprofits that are advancing liberty in our lifetime, helping people with meaningful chances to win in municipal and local elections here in New Hampshire. That's stuff that I do because it matters.
Right.
This is just fun.
This is fun. Exactly.
But no, and we haven't seen the problem of title chasers go away. But here in New Hampshire, we kind of have. It's kind of great how the title chasers have largely gone away in New Hampshire since me and you accidentally handed the party over to the Mises Caucus. At least that's what people accused us of.
I don't even know what the hell that means, really. Like, the truth is, and I told you this exact thing before the show, and I'll just say this again for the people who are listening. What happened was, Justin and I described earlier that, like, there was literally no help for me and him and Zach. Zach is the other man who ran for U.S. Congress in CD1, and I ran in CD2. And Zach Dumont, good guy. You should have him on your show at some point in time because he's actually won office before. And there was this bunch of people called the Mises Caucus who, like, honestly, like, I had access to grind with people at the top of the Mises Caucus. But at the same time, there was a ton of these people who said, like, hey, we want to do work. How do we do work? Like, that's new. Like, I'm just going to go talk to these people because I want someone who's going to go knock on doors. And that's it. That's all I want. Like, that's the thing. As mad as people got about, like, what happened on Twitter and whatever the hell else, like, and I'll be honest, like, I got upset about some of the things that were posted on Twitter myself.
But, like, the point
none
is,
of that matters. None of that matters because, like Dave Chappelle just said in his last sketch or his last special, Twitter's not real life. No. Real life is sitting outside of a market basket in Claremont, looking at a mountain while you're talking to someone about why they should vote for you, or why they should vote for your friend, or whoever you're campaigning for.
Or even real life is like LPNH for years hasn't really done anything other than hold, like you said earlier, social gatherings and meetups where people got together and used it as a social club. And while we were growing and getting new people involved in libertarianism and new people involved in the Libertarian Party, it wasn't actually accomplishing anything. It wasn't even delivering a message outside of the echo chamber we built for ourselves, to the point where LPNH was largely rejected by the Free State Project. You know, the 20,000 libertarians in New Hampshire who wanted nothing to do with the Libertarian Party. But now all of a sudden we've elected leadership in the Libertarian Party in New Hampshire who, whether or not you disagree with them, whether or not you like their messaging, they're doing something that's getting attention. They ran a billboard that got national media attention because it pissed off enough people about the mandates.
Right, because Joe Biden's a fascist.
Right.
So that's one of the funny things is I actually wrote up, I don't know if this actually got released anywhere, but I actually wrote up this very long statement about why vaccine mandates are fascism, and I actually was going to publish that under Antifa New Hampshire, which is a Facebook page that I run. And then I showed it to a bunch of the folks on the EC with me, and multiple of them were like, "Hey, can we have that for the party instead?" I'm like, "But I wrote it for a specific audience." But anyway, I ended up taking it down off that page and giving it to them as and we made it. I don't remember what we called it. Like a statement, or I don't know. We made some public statement about it. Where we
I think it was a resolution.
A resolution, right?
Yeah.
Where we took the language that I wrote. No, it wasn't even a vaccine mandate. What was it that I was talking about? Oh, the passports specifically, vaccine passports. How a federal vaccine passport policy, or even a state or any type of government-run vaccine passport policy, is fascism. And I would like to believe that the language of calling the actions of Joe Biden fascism is something that was inspired by what I did, and I hope that I had some inkling in inspiring that banner, but I don't know that I did. I'd like to think that I did.
Well, either way, it's been like astounding to see the party actually do something. A party that I've given so many hours and so many dollars to over the years in hopes of it eventually doing something, finally actually doing something, to the point where, like, we're one of the only state parties that gained in delegation size going into the national convention because we had such a growth in membership over the past year. We're hosting a meetup this coming Friday night, a screening at Chunky's in Manchester to screen V for Vendetta for libertarians in Southern New Hampshire. And it's almost sold out. Yeah, it was when it was available. All right. But it's still almost 90 people are coming to sell out the theater to watch it. Like, when was the last time you saw 90 people at an LPNH event? Not even the convention.
I don't know. We probably had. I've not gotten myself super involved in the organizing and the activizing of LP Ohio yet, but we had a joint event with LP Kentucky over in over on the Ohio River in Cincinnati at this very rundown theater. I'm forgetting what it was called. Whatever. Over on the west side, where we screened Angela McArdle's movie about. Geez, I wish that I knew what we were going to talk about before coming on here, so I could have prepped a bit. But anyway, Angela just produced a movie where she followed around a bunch of. Well, she wasn't in it. She just produced it. Where they followed around a documentary where they followed around a bunch of people who had like public storefronts, mostly restaurants, but talking about like the hardships that they faced during the pandemic. And we had probably 40 or 50 people in that theater. It was a good time. That was about a month ago, maybe 5 weeks ago. Yeah. So, there's people out.
But like it really does, like while we're seeing this surge in people actually doing things, people actually showing up, people wanting to do things with the revitalization of the party almost because of, I hate to say it, because of the Mises Caucus and them recruiting people that want to do things at a lot of these levels. Like it has been seen with major backlash by the people who don't want to do things, who are going out of their way to try and hold on to the last sliver and grasp of meaningless power that they think they have. And Doc Sexy in the YouTube chat points out that the L Party has a huge problem with their echo chamber and shunning people who chose other parties in the past.
Everyone chose a different party in the past. That's just ridiculous.
Right. But that's what we're seeing is like people are coming over to the Libertarian Party from the Republican Party, even the Liberty Republican or the Tea Party side of things, finally coming over to the Libertarian Party because they're seeing people doing things and working.
You say the Tea Party side of things?
Some. Was left of it.
I called myself Tea Party at one point in time, man.
Yeah.
Shit changed a lot.
But we're seeing people actually come over wanting to be part of something and part of a libertarian movement that's actually doing something, as the Tea Party has abandoned them. As Ronald Reagan, the great devil, once said, I didn't leave the Republican Party left me.
See, is that really true, though? Because before he was a Republican, he went after the Black Panthers in California and tried to take away their guns. Like,
right. But like, and I think people are realizing, like, there's a question I've been starting to ask myself in the past year after working so long within the Libertarian Party. Does it matter if it's a libertarian that gets shit done, or does it matter that shit gets done that advances human freedom?
All that matters is that shit gets done that advances human freedom.
Right.
Like this is one of the things that's actually gotten some of the more, God, it's weird to say establishment within the Libertarian Party, but some of the more establishment libertarians upset with me is I publicly stated once on Twitter, essentially to the effect that you're saying here, that like I hope one day we can end the Libertarian Party, and people are mad. I'm like, no, we're talking about after we end the Republican and Democrat parties, but they're like, but then what will protect freedom? I'm like, hopefully we'll have anarchy and like your local community will protect freedom. Like,
so like
party should be something that we're striving to get rid of.
I've gone out of my way to not have a leadership position in the Libertarian Party, even though I've in the past sat on the LNC, I've sat on state executive committees, and I've held leadership positions.
Well, the LNC is not really a leadership position; it's an
organizational management.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that I don't want a leadership position or a management position within the party is because I want to be able to work across party lines, and I want to be able to support initiatives that are just advancing human freedom, even if they come from a different party. I want to be able to work with Democrats on drug decrim and a zoning law decrim and like making things more affordable and better. I want to be able to work with Republicans on limiting the scope of government where we agree. This year, I have a couple bills in the State House in New Hampshire that I wrote and drafted that Republican state reps have submitted for me and sponsored for me. I wouldn't be able to do that if I was in party leadership.
Can we get that one? Outlaw OSHA?
That one's in the pipes.
Okay.
But like, I don't know if you're aware of like some of the more recent drama in the past 24 hours with the Libertarian Party of Massachusetts.
No, I don't engage in drama.
Their state committee met last night to propose a new code of conduct for members. And one of the things that is justified for expelling a member from the party is publicly supporting somebody in a different party. or criticizing anyone who's in the Libertarian Party?
Well, anyone who's in the Libertarian Party or any candidate?
It's pretty broad. It says any personal criticisms of fellow
And this
members.
stuff was already passed?
So I think the Mises Caucus people threw a fit, and they're voting on it next month, but it's going to be rubber stamped by the executive committee in Massachusetts, who proposed it and had already voted in overwhelming majority to pass it before they said, oh, it's out of order. But like, their code of conduct says if you criticize a libertarian candidate, you're out. If you personally criticize a member of the party, you're out. If you support or endorse a member of another party, you're out. And I try to tell people, like,
hang on. Does this work the other way too? Like, if they start like if the people who wrote this bill start bashing the other members of the Libertarian Party for bashing members of the Libertarian Party, do they all just have to kick each other out? Like,
who knows?
Delaware. I feel like this is like Massachusetts has reached peak libertarianism now because no one is a true libertarian, right? Like this is the no true Scotsman just written down for us so that like it's actually true.
But what it really boils down to, and I was telling people, I'm like, congratulations, you're not a political activist organization anymore. You're a cult. Like what you're doing is codifying in your party rules and in your membership rules a requirement for blind loyalty. You are saying that I can't criticize Bob Barr or Bill Weld. You are saying that I cannot criticize Bob Barr or Bill Weld, and that I cannot support Thomas Massey or Justin Amash before he's
people should go to Shire Dude's YouTube channel after this. For the people who are watching on YouTube, there's a very funny video of me interacting with Bill Weld at PorkFest, I think in 2019. It may have been 2020, when he was trying to run against Donald Trump as a Republican. And I ask him a question while he's standing up, and then I get done, and he can't really answer it great because it's a question about his support of red flag laws. And then Vermin Supreme gets up and like offers to throw a pudding cup in his face for charity. It's a riot. But you should be allowed to criticize and bash anyone in the party because the party's not above criticism, right? Like
the moment you're not allowed to criticize people, it's a cult. And we've been saying this for the past year about like the science is settled arguments around the COVID vaccines. It's like,
oh my God,
if you can't question it, it's not science, it's a religion.
Dude, we still have arguments if we still live in a society where we have arguments over whether over what foods are good and bad for people. And we have been eating since the beginning of time. So how on God's green earth can the science be settled on anything that has to do with a disease that is, what, 2 years old at this point in time?
That's by definition novel and unique. And
like it keeps changing at a rate that we can't really predict going forward. Like if you want to say, oh, the science is settled, the vaccine, prevents the disease. Well, obviously it's the evidence that's available seems to show that the vaccines do offer some level of immunity. But so does having COVID before, But so does having COVID, right? Like if you get through COVID, then you've got some level of immunity. So then all of a sudden your vaccine mandate's ridiculous because there's all kinds of reasons that someone.
Well, your mandate's ridiculous the moment you try and use force to enforce it, regardless of the science.
Yeah, right. And all these people who are like, oh, well, if it saves one life, then it should be done. Like I can come up with an infinite number of things that we can do that I promise you would save lives that you would be furious at. Like, let's just say no more lighters anywhere. Like none. Unless it's like on your stove, you're just not allowed to have a lighter.
Ban sugar.
We'd save a lot of lives. Ban sugar. Why not?
Ban sugar.
Why not? You know what? No more. Do Christian bakers get to just tell gay people that they can't bake cakes? It's just going to be the Christian baker says, I can't bake a cake for anybody because I don't have sugar. Like that's the society I want to live in, right? Like you can come up with an infinite number of things that you can mandate that will save someone's life, or that you can argue will save someone's life. And like so there is obviously this certain amount of slippery slope, and like the truth is arguments around like what counts as negligently unethical behavior is very muddy. But man, mandates suck. I think
mandates suck, and unfortunately, we have seen medicine. We have seen medical information and disease and medical autonomy become kind of the political dividing factor in this country, and it started almost a new culture war as we move forward. And like what we've talked about to this point has been political activism. It's been inside baseball with Libertarian Party and Liberty Movement. But like, I think because of this kind of division in the country along cultural and political lines surrounding an inherently libertarian issue, we do have an opportunity to really take hold of the narrative here and be the ones out in front of the narrative as libertarians, spreading the message of personal autonomy, bodily freedom, and against mandates, and against government intrusion in private business. And we're not grasping it because people aren't doing things. And I like to talk a lot about like what libertarians aren't doing to engage in culture. And a lot of like politics is downstream from culture. What are we doing to impact culture? We know a lot of libertarians aren't doing anything at all, regardless, whether politically or culturally. But maybe if we shift our activism towards culture and changing people's minds on the very basis of their principles rather than their votes at a ballot box, we can have a more significant impact. And we look at things like the ad that runs before this show was produced by Dan Smots about the lockdowns and COVID.
Yeah, I gotta say, I gotta be really careful when we start talking about medical stuff. Like as soon as you ran that ad, I'm like, oh shit. I now have a bunch of friends. I'm playing Australian rules football here in Cincinnati, and I have a bunch of friends on that team who are in med school at UC. And I don't think they're going to watch this, but there's an outside chance that they do. And I don't want to say anything that I'm going to get like, they're going to be like, you're a fucking idiot. Like, you don't know what you're talking about.
The beauty of that ad is it has nothing to do about the science. It has nothing to do about the efficacy of vaccines. It's just about the principles behind mandates and government force. And like Dan put together that ad in response to the Libertarian Party starting a fundraiser to produce an ad to run. And they raised tens of thousands of dollars to produce an ad that is very lackluster, very boring, doesn't get the point across. It's 30 seconds long and loses your attention, and you don't know what they were trying to get across.
The party shouldn't be. See, this is one of the things that I sort of disagree with some of the newer folk who came into the party on is like, I don't think that the party should be in charge of messaging. I think messaging should be the members of the party. And I think the idea that the Libertarian Party should be put in charge of a commercial, oh my God. Like if the LNC wants to step aside and say, we're going to pay 4 people, let's vote on the 4 people we're going to have make a commercial for us. If that's what they wanted to do, great. There are way too many heads in that room to get anything properly done. I don't know, because the truth is, like, when you've got like 18 people in a room all yelling about what they need or what they want to see in a thing, like, you're going to end up getting not enough of anyone's idea, and it's not going to be focused at all. And I don't know, I didn't even watch it, but like the idea that committee could do something artistic properly, or that committees can do things artistically properly, like, is ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's mind-blowing. And to your point, the members of the party should be the ones engaging. And like, I did a show with Top Lobster about using art and graffiti-style guerrilla art and merchandising to get out cultural messaging. I did a show with a couple stand-up comics, Adam Nutter, to talk about using media and comedy to deliver messaging and cultural messaging. And these are people who are doing things not politically, to help shift the needle towards libertarianism. And I know me and you have had
to start promoting sports. Like I see it a lot more in like what we see in athletics now, where there's a number of people who are standing up against these.
Aaron Rodgers, Kyrie
Aaron
Irving.
Rodgers is the greatest example in the world. Everyone's like, a bunch of people said he lied. I think that that's completely ridiculous, or not completely ridiculous. I understand how people came to that conclusion. And for people who aren't watching this, because I understand there aren't a lot of, or people who are watching this, I understand there aren't a lot of sports ball people who are watching this.
There's a lot more NASCAR people now.
Oh man, there's a lot more NASCAR people now. I feel kind of bad for Brandon Brown, but okay, back to Rodgers. He was asked if he was vaccinated back in like August by a media member, and he said, yes, I'm immunized. Well, and then we all find out that he's not actually vaccinated a few days ago, or like a week ago, like as he was tested positive for COVID, and he was tested positive through the unvaccinated person's protocols. So obviously he wasn't vaccinated. We all found that out.
Right.
So everyone's like, he lied. Well, it turns out he was in the middle of petitioning the NFL for some medical therapy that he got that he's still not made public. I don't even have a way to begin to guess what it was. That he wanted to get vaccination status from the league for going through this therapy. So at the time he's going through the appeal process, as far as he is concerned, he was vaccinated. And I think as far as he's concerned today, I don't know if he'd say vaccinated. I don't think he kept saying that word, but immunized. I watched his interview with Pat McAfee again today, and he seems to be totally fine, which we have been told the vaccine does not prevent you from getting COVID. It just makes the symptoms milder. Looks to me a lot like whatever Aaron Rodgers did was possibly very successful in producing a similar immunization to the vaccine. And again, I don't know what he did. I don't have a way to begin to guess what he did. I do know he took ivermectin because he talked about Joe Rogan, but
he did say he got advice from Joe Rogan.
But I don't know what his therapy was that he did in over the summer that he considered himself immunized. I don't know what that was, and I'm very curious to find out. But at the same time, he doesn't owe that to me, and he doesn't owe that to anybody. But he went out on this big diatribe on Pat McAfee's show last Thursday or Friday. And he just said, like, I believe in body autonomy. Body autonomy. It's a basic human right, and this is one of the things where there's a bunch of, okay, I could go on for like solid 10 minutes.
My favorite part of what Aaron Rodgers said in that, though, he's like, at the end of it, he goes on, and like when it finally gets into what are the politics of this, Aaron Rodgers said, the right is going to champion me. The left is going to cancel me. I don't give a shit. I hate them both.
Do you think the right would be on board with vaccine mandates today if Trump was still president?
Absolutely.
Right. Like
I remember
that was entirely a political thing.
2 years ago, like when they started Project Warp Speed to develop the vaccines and to use public money to pay these private companies to develop the vaccines and waive FDA approval for them, it was Democrat congressmen. It was Democrats in Congress who were publicly tweeting, I will never take the Trump vaccine.
Yeah.
And then the moment Joe Biden is elected, they're lining up to say you have to take the Biden.
It's like vaccine. It's Joe Biden's vaccine. It's like Joe Biden had nothing to do with this. And Trump really had very little to do with it other than giving the FDA some directives to fast track the approval process. And I don't, yeah.
Right. It's wild that it really has been a decision based on political divide and political lines, where it's the right is opposed to it. And I know it's not all Republicans. We have Shannon here. Shannon is a Republican, but she's been on our side the whole time.
But here's the thing, though. Do you have the ability to let me screen share on this thing?
Yep. So if you looked in the bottom, it should say share.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
So, but yeah, the political divide on things has been absolutely wild, and people are taking things like politics has become the cultural divide in this country, and that's what's really driven me nuts. Like people are no longer. There used to be a day where like don't bring up politics at dinner. It's impolite and inappropriate, and people and their families wouldn't discuss politics.
All right, can you guys see this?
All right, there we go.
This is something that Stat News published back in June, and it is, and I highly recommend everyone go check this out. It is a list of, and it's not the easiest thing to navigate. It is a list of a bunch of different pharmaceutical companies over here. Moderna's not on there, and it will show you exactly who they donated to. So let's just go to the most troubling one first. Pfizer, $1,332,000 given out to congressional and Senate campaigns, and all these red lines show you all the people that they gave to. So like you can see this guy here in California, Doug Lamoffle, he didn't take any money, but like these go to Republicans and Democrats. The people who are in on like the people who are in on like mandating these things, like the reason why you have so few people speaking out on these mandates is because, well, all of the people in power are getting money from the people who benefit, make a ton of money for Pfizer. Pfizer is supposed to be making something like $33.5 billion this year. And I don't know how much Johnson & Johnson or Moderna are going to make. I imagine it's less. But like, if you just want to see how dirty everything is, like you can just look here. And this is just the stuff that's disclosed. Like, think about the amount of stuff that goes into PACs and any of the other dirty ways that I'm very positive companies do this stuff with. I don't know. I wanted to show people that because it's to illustrate a point that while the two bases, like the left and the right, may be swinging where they are on these mandates based off of who's in power, the people in power, regardless of if it was Republicans or Democrats, sort of want the same thing, at least in the realm of what the pharmaceutical companies want.
Right. And the craziest part about it is like the people who, like, since it's become a political divide, since January 6th, when all of a sudden it was a Democrat vaccine instead of a Republican vaccine, the agenda has been shifted where the people now in favor of the mandates, people are saying you must get this shot, it's a requirement, are the same people who spent the past decade railing against big pharma, against pharmaceutical companies jacking up prices for profit, against pharmaceutical companies prioritizing profits and shareholders over health and treatment, and raising prices on their drugs and charging inordinate amounts for drugs. The same people were saying that we shouldn't have these conglomerate pharmaceutical companies who buy politicians are the ones now culturally supporting a mandate that does nothing but enrich these pharmaceutical companies.
You know, I mean, it's there probably are some people who have good faith beliefs in these mandates, and probably who don't see the mandates as a way. But the people in power who are supporting these mandates and allowing these mandates to go, even if they come at it in a good faith way, they have insane conflicts of interests that I think I just showed everybody. That's before we even look at what's in their stock portfolios, to see how much Moderna and how much Pfizer they all own.
It's
and isn't it weird that the government is the one paying for all these vaccines, but as part of the mandate, there's an option for you to get tested, but
you have to pay for the test.
Federal government somehow doesn't have, but these members of the federal government who have all the, like, it's weird, the one that they're choosing to subsidize, right? Like,
well, so Pfizer is using mRNA technology, which has been spearheaded by Moderna, ModRNA. That's the name of the company. They've developed the technology. They're a startup. They're only 10 years old. They've only existed for 10 years. They've never had a successful clinical trial in the history of the company. It was a very, very small research-based company in Boston. They've submitted several drugs over the past decade for clinical trial, and every one has been rejected for long-term side effects.
I think it's been a little longer than 10 years. If you look them up on Wikipedia, you can see a lot of the the contracts they've had in the past, and a lot of how they've been able to.
They've been a public company for 10 years, publicly traded.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
A lot of how they've been able to operate up to this point is they've had their research funded by different branches of the U.S. government for one purpose or another.
But the thing to me was like, they're a novel technology that has never had a successful experiment. It's been simply research-based company for years. And they didn't have a single product on the market. Every product that they've attempted to get on the market has been recalled and rejected for long-term potential side effects. And then a member of their board of directors was appointed to head Project Warp Speed, the public-private funding partnership to develop a vaccine.
Yep.
He poured billions of dollars of taxpayer money into Moderna to develop the mRNA vaccine. He never divested his stock. And I never thought there'd be a single thing I agreed with Elizabeth Warren on. But Elizabeth Warren was the one who blew the whistle on it. She's like, what the hell are we doing? Like, this is corruption. He's funneling public money into a private company in which he owns millions of dollars of stock. That stock went from $13 a share to upwards of $400 a share over the course of last year.
Yep.
Like, we're choosing Moderna and mRNA technology, which, by the way, because Pfizer is using the mRNA technology, they're paying a royalty to Moderna for developing it.
Wait. Hang on. Does Moderna own the proprietary information and the intellectual property on anything having to do with any mRNA vaccine?
On the COVID one particularly.
On the COVID one specifically. So Pfizer is just copying Moderna's.
Right, but Pfizer has the production capability. Moderna didn't have the production capability when they developed it.
Okay.
They were just a small research firm.
All right. So Moderna holds a patent.
Right.
And Pfizer pays for that patent. And then the U.S. government pays Pfizer to pay for that patent so that Pfizer can make a vaccine that they can. Man, there's so many people who are getting money here before
anyone gets the vaccine.
We're getting money here before anybody even gets the vaccine. Like, this is baffling. I mean, it's not baffling. It's obviously corrupt.
Right. And I opposed the vaccines from the beginning. People were like, oh, you're an anti-vaxxer. I'm like, no, I'm anti-corruption. And like, I want a testing process. I don't want an FDA approval. I think the FDA is government overreach, and there should be a market-based response here, a market-based determination of what the appropriate vaccine is and when it comes out. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I just don't trust this process because this process has been very publicly corrupt. And rather than looking at Comirnaty, rather than looking at Merck Pharmaceuticals, who developed a vaccine using mononuclear antibodies, which is still going through FDA approval and did not get an emergency authorization.
Is that the mononucleal? I thought it was
monoclonal. I can't pronounce the word. I don't know what the word is, but like Merck Pharmaceuticals had a vaccine on the same timetable as Moderna and Pfizer, using a different process altogether that didn't get granted emergency use authorization.
Hang on, let's hop back over to the stat sheet, and we're gonna look up who Merck's given money to. Oh, Merck's not that far behind. Never mind. I thought I was assuming that I was gonna click on this and they were gonna be like way behind Pfizer. They're behind Pfizer, but it's not that far. Never mind.
Right. It's like this has been entirely a get rich quick scheme for Moderna and Pfizer, and at the expense of the US taxpayer.
Yeah.
And that's the part that's pissed me off about it from the get-go.
Right. Because here's the thing. I'm still at a point where I think the average person probably should get vaccinated. But like
at some point, and that's where I'm at too. And like I talked to my mother. My mother is a nurse. My mother works in medicine, and I
just don't trust these people.
And like, to me, it comes down to like, well, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I do believe in vaccine science. Well, there are vaccines out there that I would consider getting. At what point, because of the mandates in place, do I have to reject getting the vaccine because I don't want to normalize compliance with the mandate? Even if I believe in the vaccine, there's part of me that says I can't get it because I don't want to normalize compliance.
Let me drop the other shoe on you here, though.
Yeah.
Let me drop the other side of that same coin on you here, though. what if you get the vaccine just so that you can be the person who said, see, I got the vaccine and I still oppose the mandate?
That's what they've been doing in Italy, and it hasn't been working.
Uh-oh.
People have been lining up in Italy to burn their vaccine passport, saying I'm vaccinated and still oppose the vaccine. And you'll still see government crackdown.
It just the
moment you get vaccinated, you get added to the total of see everyone else is doing it. You have to too.
How do we get that that Liechtenstein provision that lets people secede their own land from the country? That's I think that would solve a lot of things. Not even just from people seceding, just from the government having to like sit back and say, like, if we piss enough people off, they are going to secede.
You'd need a totalitarian dictator who's benevolent.
Gosh.
Liechtenstein has the benefit of Prince Hans Adam II
Sounds
being a
great.
libertarian.
Sounds like a world I want to live in.
Liechtenstein has the benefit of having a head of state who lists Ron Paul.
You ever hear the theory about Tolkien? Right. So Tolkien's an anarchist who saw monarchy as the second best form of governance, and how the Shire represents anarchy and Gondor represents the monarchy, and those are the two best functioning societies in the entirety of Lord of the Rings.
It's a very Hoppian approach. Like Hoppe goes down the road of like the best form of government is a monarchy. Like at this point, and like I'll take that a step further.
Yeah, but you got to get lucky. You got to get lucky.
You have to get lucky.
It can be really bad.
A monarch can only govern with the consent of the governed, and to throw the nap out the window, if you want to talk about how you address grievances in a monarchy,
consent culture. This is what I was trying to drive through before when we were talking about Aaron Rodgers. Like consent has to be the center of everything. The nap is just the nap is very short-sighted.
In a representative republic, you have 435 people, and like you have to get rid of all of them to make a difference, or at least a majority of them to make a difference. In a monarchy, there's only a single target. So maybe that's what makes monarchy better, is it's easy to get rid of.
Yeah, that might actually be the thing that makes monarchy preferable, but to what we have today.
Shannon comments in chat, I had stage 3 cancer and was cancer-free as of August. With having 6 months of chemo, I had a compromised immune system, got COVID for the first time this past August, had monoclonal antibodies. To that point, like they've been saying immunocompromised people in Shannon's position were the ones who were at most risk of getting the disease. And even in that position, it took 2 years of it being a pandemic before you finally caught it.
Yeah, well, I hope she's doing well with it.
Yeah. Well, she had ivermectin, a bad cold for 3 days. God bless you, Shannon.
So here's the weird thing. Can we talk about ivermectin for a second? Not a doctor, not a medical person of any kind, but I did find a study or a meta-analysis that the NIH published in 2019. Ivermectin does
You're
have
breaking up a little bit, AJ. Back up and broke up.
Antiviral buddy that they can treat COVID. Hang on, let me close some windows and see what happens. I'm not telling anybody that they can treat COVID with ivermectin, and I'm not telling anybody that, it's won awards for whatever purpose, X, Y, and Z. I'm saying that there is significant research out there showing that ivermectin has antiviral properties. So the idea that it's not plausible that ivermectin treats COVID is ridiculous.
I want to take this a step further because I remember at when the pandemic was at its height, when people were at their most worried and freaked out, I put out a tweet jokingly where I said cocaine kills COVID. And a bunch of people thought it was funny. A bunch of people laughed. And then a few people were like, that's inappropriate. That's bad medical advice. Show your sources. And I'm like, okay, fuck you. I'll find a way to make this work. Like, I'm like, I don't care what mental gymnastics I have to jump through. I'm going to find something that proves that cocaine kills COVID. And I found an NIH study about how doctors in France were using levimethol as a prophylactic treatment to reduce COVID severity and to treat COVID and prevent COVID infection. In like 92% of cocaine in North America is cut with levimethol because levimethol is available over the counter in a powdered form, and levimethol is a horse dewormer. And that was well before the ivermectin shit started. And I pissed off Twitter by pointing out how another horse dewormer was being used in other countries to treat COVID. It's not just ivermectin. It turns out the deworming agents have antiviral properties. And like with the ivermectin, and we're into demonetization territory now. Who cares? We'll go full blown. There's been a Nobel Prize winning study about its antiviral properties in humans.
Like, wait, is that what the Nobel Prize was for? I thought it was for. I don't remember what it was for. I didn't think it was for that.
The Nobel Prize was for was a study in using ivermectin as an off-label medication to treat viral outbreaks. And here's the thing: ivermectin has been a freaking generic drug for years. Nobody owns the patent on it. Any pharmaceutical company can produce it. It's very, very cheap. It's sold over the counter for veterinary medicine. And its approved on-label use is as a deworming agent. Nobody is going to pay for an FDA-approved study to get a new on-label use because they can't profit from it. So the FDA won't approve ivermectin for antiviral treatment, even though there's a ton of research to suggest it has antiviral properties, because nobody will pay the FDA because they won't be able to recoup the costs because they can't claim the IP on the drug.
So what happened to all that money that I thought it was for an anti-parasitic that it won the Nobel Prize for.
No, that's what it's just used for.
Okay.
Like you have to get ivermectin if you're traveling to Africa.
Well, so here's the other thing. There's a topical form of ivermectin called Cilantro that people use for their rosacea and other skin issues. And it turns out that this stuff is like $30 a bottle. And it turns out that a lot of the people, and if you don't have insurance, it can be like $150. And it turns out that a lot of the people who complain about the cost of it to their doctors, the doctors have gone ahead and this has happened. The doctors have gone ahead and told them to get the horse formula because it's $5 a tube and rub it on their skin. And now those people are being targeted at Tractor Supply and being asked to show pictures of them with a horse to prove that they own a horse. It's like, but this isn't why I'm buying it. I'm buying it for a medical purpose. Well, the FDA says it's not for medical purposes. Okay, but the doctor says it's not. But COVID. Okay, it's not for COVID though. Like,
yeah, it's the same thing. Like off-label use of medications, and that's the new thing. Like the Biden administration has issued regulations banning off-label use for medications because of ivermectin as a response to ivermectin usage. Medicines have been used off-label in this country for decades. One of the most commonly prescribed off-label medications in the United States is Viagra, which is prescribed to elderly women as a blood pressure medicine.
Yeah.
Because it's so much cheaper than the blood pressure medicine.
Oh, yeah. Viagra, for people who don't know, that's what Viagra does. It's a blood flow issue. It makes it helps open up the, what do you call them? Arteries. Yeah, so it helps open up your arteries.
Shannon does point out in chat, Adam Carolla, I think, was the one that said, why aren't we hearing people in Africa having such devastating effects from COVID? He brought up when AIDS was a thing, we heard it nonstop. He looked into if COVID was such a problem in Africa, and it wasn't. But also, they take ivermectin on a regular basis.
Why do they take ivermectin in Africa?
Because it's an anti-parasitic and
for malaria and stuff like that?
For malaria and parasites that are just naturally occurring in Africa.
That's really funny.
It's something that's prescribed commonly. I made a joke that got me in trouble on Twitter along the exact same lines where I said, why aren't people in Zimbabwe? Why does it, like, I looked at a chart and Zimbabwe had the lowest per capita COVID rate in the world. And I'm like, how come Zimbabwe has such a low COVID death count? And because Rhodesians never die. And everyone said I was racist. Are you not familiar with Rhodesia?
Yeah. Okay, I get it. Yeah. I don't.
There's a great song from the Rhodesian mercenaries called Rhodesians Never Die.
Yeah, it doesn't seem racist to me. I don't. Okay.
Well, they were an apartheid state.
Yeah, but who sang this? Okay. That's a fair point.
But, yeah. All right. So
I don't know. Look, I wasn't taught African politics in school.
I wasn't taught. I don't think they teach global politics in public education in America anyways.
Yeah, well, I didn't go to a public school, but they don't teach them in private schools either.
Well, we've had a good conversation, free-ranging conversation. We didn't even get to talking about the sci-fi that I expected us to talk about.
What sci-fi stuff do we want to talk on before?
I know AJ has a plan.
We want to get to Logan's Run.
Logan's Run being the libertarian dystopian movie. Well, not libertarian dystopian, a dystopian movie most showing the need for libertarianism, most in desperate need of a remake.
Oh my God. Has there ever been a movie that more desperately needs a remake? Like, why did they make Dune?
Have you seen Dune yet?
I haven't. I'm sure it's good.
It's an incredible 1/3 of a movie.
Okay. I'll have to check it out. But why does Disney have to keep rehashing comic book characters like when they could just make Logan's Run? And like for no money at all, it doesn't even need, it just needs, literally you could do a shot-for-shot remake of, when did that movie come out? Was it 70 something, 79 maybe? Let me look that one up real quick.
I think it was, as Logan's Run came out 6 months before Star Wars Episode 4.
Logan's Run the film, 1976. Right.
Logan's Run came out right before Star Wars, and so that should show you how Logan's Run doesn't even hold up for the late 70s.
Right. Okay. And Star Wars came out in 1977. All right. So let me pull up some pictures here.
The worst special effects ever made.
Oh my God. We're not even going to show. Are we going to get? Am I going to get you DMCA'd or whatever if I start showing pictures?
We already talked about ivermectin.
All right. Let me see if I can find some of like the really bad effects on the image search.
But for like, if for those of you who aren't aware of the story of Logan's Run, it's an actual really incredible original dystopian story.
That came from the book.
Sure, they didn't change the title. They made Logan's Run the movie. It's not like they stole the plot for another series.
Right. It was Logan's Run the book, and they made it a movie.
Right.
In the book, they kill him at 20. In the movie, they kill him at 30. It's a similar plot.
It's a story about people who live in self-contained little cities where they think they're the only city left in the world, and they have a religion around population control where the moment you hit the age of 30, you're killed. And Stephen does ask, is it implied in Logan's Run that they are eating the bodies of the dead?
No, not at all. It's implied in Logan's Run that the religion that you're following, which is taught to you by a computer, is that when you die at 30, you are reborn as a baby. And there's a very wild like reveal around that, maybe only like 15 minutes into the movie that I want to talk about, but I can't because you guys need to go watch the movie. Like here's the thing. It is one of the greatest screenplays that has ever been written. It is an absolute libertarian movie and an absolute masterpiece of a screenplay. But the special effects take you so far out of it. It's like, and the costumes take you so far out of it. Okay, I can't find any that are really bad showing the effects here, but let me just.
It's to the point where like they're in an age where like George Lucas was pioneering special effects, and it wasn't just for Star Wars and Lucasfilm. Like it was the age of special effects. And Logan's Run has scenes where people are elevated off the floor, where you can very clearly
see the wires that they're being held up by. It's ridiculous.
And it's not even the acting that's terrible. It's not. It's just simply the production, and it's such a great film that should be in the top 10 dystopian films of all time if the production weren't so terrible.
Right. Okay, so I can't find any stills that show the production or the special effects being really bad, but here's just some costumes of them going to their religious ceremony. And I'm not ruining anything. This is the plot of the movie. This is established like 2 minutes in. But these are the costumes that they're all wearing at their religious ceremony as the 30-year-olds are about to sacrifice themselves to the computer.
So what is it about the movie that you love so much that makes you want to have it remade? Go.
So it is a libertarian film, and there's a lot of libertarian films out there, right? V for Vendetta is pretty libertarian. The Hunger Games movie, particularly when you get to the fourth one and she kills the new leader too. Spoiler alert for people who haven't seen Hunger Games at this point in time, or read the books, which you should do. Is an incredibly libertarian movie. Like there's a ton of those films out there, right? And I just feel like we just need one more, man. Like Logan's Run is one that spoke to me a lot when I first saw it. Like it's about, it's about a guy who it's not even just he's living under an oppressive rule, or these people are living under an oppressive rule. It's the oppressive rule is so pervasive that the people don't realize that they're being oppressed. It is sort of like almost a step better than the Matrix, because the Matrix is almost like an electrical medical thing that they inject into you and they trick you that way. Like, no, this is just conditioning, where they get these people to accept the oppression of, and I forget what they call the entity, but the computer that rules over them. And it helps. And you see one guy just sort of break out because the computer was honest with him like one time, like 10 minutes into the film. And it just spirals everything out of control because the truth just sort of destroys the entire society by the end of it. Just because the computer told one guy the truth of how the world actually works. And not even the whole truth, just like one piece of the religion the computer admitted wasn't really true.
Which, I mean, it's hard for a computer to admit it's lying.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm eagerly awaiting AJ's announcement of his crowdfunding campaign to get Logan's Run remade.
I don't even know who owns the IP to that. Like we're going to, okay, right. We have to figure out how to remake Logan's Run. It's such a good film, but even if it doesn't get remade, everybody watching this should go find Logan's Run and watch it because it's incredible. And I'm not talking about the show. I'm talking about the movie. I've not seen the show. I've only heard bad things about the show. Although I think most people would only tell you bad things about the movie as well.
All right. Well, it's been a long night. It's been a long conversation. It's been a fun conversation. Free ranging. We touched on everything all over the map. AJ, where can people follow you?
I am on Twitter at Andrew Olding. I don't know. That's sort of it right now.
Any plans to run for Congress again?
No. I think the biggest thing in front of me before, because we wanted to talk about people who are doing things, the idea that I have floating around in my brain right now for politics that I want to engage myself in or maybe start while I'm here in Cincinnati is a citizen referendum on forcing city council to hold their meetings after 5 p.m. so that people can attend them. Because right now they hold them, I believe it's like Wednesday or Thursday at 2 p.m. And for those of you that are watching who aren't aware of this, this is like a nationally known thing. The city of Cincinnati City Council is one of the most corrupt in the country. Like lots of crimes get done, lots of collusion behind closed doors and things like that. And I really think it would go a long way to stop a lot of that if they were forced to hold meetings at the same time that every like small town does in America. If you're like, hey, no, you've got to hold this at like 6 on Thursday. So I'm thinking about, I'm trying to see what goes into putting together a petition drive in the city of Cincinnati, because I don't think winning city council is a realistic goal when everyone the Democrats endorse wins in the city. Like that's just how it goes. That's how major cities are. But if you can force those Democrats to be less corrupt, I think that's a play. And I think what I'm suggesting really isn't objectionable to anybody.
All right. Well, it'll be interesting to see how it turns out. Everybody go give AJ a follow, hit the like button, leave some comments, and until next time, be free. Thanks again for tuning in and joining us tonight. Make sure you hit that like button and leave a comment below to let us know your thoughts. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and hit that big red subscribe button on YouTube and turn on notifications to get alerted every time we go live. If you enjoyed this content, you can join our production team on Patreon by following the link in the description. And don't forget to follow on social media and join our community Discord channel by following the links in the description as well. The best part of all of this is the community that we're building and growing. So go ahead and join us. And thanks once again to our awesome sponsors and patrons for making all of this possible. And if you can't catch the show live, you can always catch it the next day on YouTube, Odyssey, Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcasts. So until next time, everybody, be free.